In over 20 major U.S. cities, homicides spiked in the first months of this year, causing the media to search for explanations while denying their own role in this body count. So far, they blame heroin, gangs, and economic factors, but one person isn't fleeing from the truth. FBI Director James Comey believes scrutiny aimed at police has changed the way it deals with citizens, creating a reticence that has increased homicides, mainly among minorities. Odd that the media says minorities are often victims of the police, yet more die when the cops back off. So is this a coincidence? When you prevent the police from doing their jobs, murders go up? No, that's a scientific method, a consequence of an experiment. The experiment, hold back. The consequence, death. Now, liberals will bend over backwards to say they are troubled by this, but they will resist any common-sense answers. More petty crime, assaults, and robberies occur when perps know the police aren't respected and crime becomes more tolerated. Witness the wild jump in shoplifting in California since a bill reduced penalties. Looting is now shopping. Fact is, reality implicates those scrambling for excuses. Politicians, activists, and media who undermine the men and women in blue. As gangs, occupied by immigrant and out-of-work young men, savage cities from Long Beach to Chicago, you might wonder, where are the police? They're looking out for themselves. Someone has to. The numbers, Kimberly, are insane. Do you know that Long Beach has a 125% increase? Arlington, Texas, 100%. El Paso, 100%. Mesa, 100%. Las Vegas, 81%. This is the first quarter this year. It could change. Does anything strike you, similarities?
Yeah, I think this is really problematic. I mean, obviously, gun violence, gang cases. I worked in Long Beach, and they had a tremendous problem with guns on the streets and gang violence. That was one of the cities that the LADA's office was in charge of. But I'll tell you what, when you see places like New York, when they are putting forward policies, legal policies, and saying that they need to be banned here, it's not making the public or the citizens here more safe. It's actually making it unsafe for them because they're not able to take the guns off the street, okay? And they're making it too PC. The police are then afraid to even do their job. They don't want to get sued. They don't want to get bad mouths on TV. I mean, cops get killed in the line of duty. Does the president call them? Do they call their families? No, but he'll go ahead and say, oh, if I had a son, he looked like Trayvon Martin. This is part of a culture that's going on right now that is really, really dangerous for public safety.
Juan, should I go to you now or show a clip from Sheriff Clark?
Go.
Yes, Sheriff Clark has this to say.
Cops are not afraid to do their job. What they are afraid of, I got a different effect. It's called the cop-hating United States Department of Justice, led by a race-obsessed Attorney General. The President of the United States has been leading the chorus in slandering and maligning the character, the integrity, the service, and the sacrifice of our nation's law enforcement officers. What officers fear is some witch hunt, this ongoing witch hunt by the Civil Rights Division, taking over law enforcement agencies all across the nation.
Now, Juan, I know you disagree with most of it, but there is some truth to what he is saying, right? That cops feel that there's a witch hunt.
I don't know this, but I mean, I'll trust him. I trust him. I find he says very provocative things, but I don't know that I found him to be inaccurate. But I will say this, that I don't see that there's any evidence to support your monologue, because I just read in the research that it says that there's been a decline in New York and other cities.
But all these other cities, there are at least 20-plus cities. I don't know how many.
Okay,
5 cities.
So we've seen a spike in some cities, but it's not. But if this phenomenon was in fact proven, it would be every city, because every city, New York to Ferguson, has been touched by this business about the videoing.
But New York has a more, in my mind, a sophisticated police department that is well integrated and reflects the nature of the population a lot. Maybe that's the issue.
Well, that's an interesting point. I think New York City's police department is very integrated, but I think New York City has had the whole argument about stop and frisk, about Eric Garner being choked out in Staten Island. All that's here. But you've seen a decline. So I think something else is at work. Now, the arguments have to do with things like heroin, and we know there's more heroin around. It also has to do with drug trafficking, and the break you and I were talking about, look at where these cities are.
Yeah.
They're right on the Mexican border for the most part. So I think there are other ways to look at it. What's curious to me is that the FBI director, Jim Comey, who's just a man, I think, great integrity, says he thinks it is the fact that cops are being videotaped. But you even heard there Sheriff Clark say, cops are doing their jobs. It's not asking you to do anything different. If you're videotaped, go right ahead. Videotape. Do your job.
Eric, thoughts?
So, yeah. You know, right after Eric Garner and right after the stop and frisk issue came up in New York, we all said that the incidences of crime was going to go up, and for the most part, it did. But to show a 25% decrease in the numbers the way some of these other cities, I'm of the mind that I love Sheriff Clark. I think he's so passionate. He believes in cops. I do, too. There's no one who loves law enforcement in the world than I do. I don't think it's fair to say that a cop's not going to do his job because of a videotape. I think a cop is on the job. He's going to stop the crime whether or not he's going to be videotaped or not. I just think this is, and again, I'm going to agree with this. I think the opiate is a massive problem. There's more and more opiates and heroin coming from Mexico. It's an epidemic, and it's starting all along the border cities. It's going to work its way up. I think that's the blame. And again, I honestly think it's going to help everyone out, from the victims to the cops to the community. Get every cop fitted with a body cam. Get every cop fitted with a body cam, and you can solve all these problems. Yeah, but again, I'm not going. James, I agree. James Comey's amazing.
I like
but
James
I don't agree with it.
But I don't agree with it either, because if someone's beating me in the head and someone tapes it, I think that's stop, cop. Don't do that.
Okay. Well, Dana, I have another interesting element to this is Obama's focus. While we're seeing the violence go up in these cities, President Obama seems overly concerned with what's going on in bathrooms.
The transgender
Yeah.
issue?
I mean, it's like there are people dying, and he goes for the PC, the thing that gets the most press.
I would say there's a real opportunity here for either of the candidates in the presidential election, and also if you're one of the down-ballot candidates in any of those states, which is, how are you going to help to try to turn this around? And that's why I mentioned the crime bill earlier. One of the reasons that the crime bill was passed in 1994 was to deal with crime stats that were higher than that, but that were on the rise. And it worked. Now they want to reverse it back. I would say if you are Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, you start getting your ducks in a row and you figure out what you can say to convince communities that you would be somebody that would either try to help stop this or get the resources to the cops that they need.
All right. Donald Trump's hitting back at the New York Times for its expose on his past